Hello, my name is Sean Sands from Gamers with Jobs. I'm back with another look at the ARPG, action role-playing game genre, as it's going right now. Last time in episode 1, we took a quick look at Path of Exile. This episode, we're going to dive into Grim Dawn. Grim Dawn is made by Crate Entertainment and is... it's definitely the indie of the group, and as a result, has all the good and potentially bad that comes with that. Good in the sense that it had a rich and robust early access. It recently released into a full version. Lots of kind of community feedback and engagement and growth and stuff like that. It has its own sort of identity and sort of sense about it. But the negative, of course, I mean, well, maybe not of course, but the negative to me being that it is so far probably the least featured of the three that we're going to be looking at, the least fully fleshed out, which is not to say it's a thin game at all, but one of the things we were talking about in Path of Exile is that it has all these kind of diverse game types and, you know, these really robust kind of features that define it, you know, whether it's sort of the socket skills system, the huge skill tree, you know, it's obviously free to play. Like, there's some things that really, like, it just owns. And the same would be true when we hit Diablo 3. Grim Dawn is sort of, to my mind, more of a, it's a very straightforward ARPG. It's got a, you know, full campaign. It's got a recently released DLC that adds a little bit of competitive playability to it, but it doesn't feel to me like a thing that just has, you know, all these kind of branching multiple paths you can go down. It feels a little straightforward. Now you'll see over here I don't have any super high level characters in this one either, so again I'm kind of talking about this at a surface perspective. I haven't dove into the end game a ton. I'm just kind of looking at it from that, you know, putting 20, 30 hours. What's that experience going to be like? How does this sort of represent the growth of the genre? I think, just like last time, what I'd like to do is just sort of start and give you a quick take. This character's name is Dave. Dave, the to be decided. Just get a sense of the basic mechanics and how, you know, some of the game is structured. So when you start Grim Dawn, you start in this town. The idea, conceit here is that you were possessed at some point. Why you have a whole bunch of little sigils and stuff on the ground, but the ethereal spirit left you and they cut you down before you hang to death. And now you find yourself in this town, just sort of a level 1 dude with a club and a shield, trying to find his way in the world.
You will need.
I mean, the mechanics of it are just like a Diablo game, just like, you know, anything else you'd expect. Like lots of top-down clicking, you know, isometric view, hit things, bash things, you know, kick them around. It's got kind of a, you know, steampunk's the wrong word for it, but it doesn't feel sort of classic high fantasy-ish. There's, you know, guns and people are kind of wearing, you know, it's almost more Victorian, for lack of a better term, with a hint of, Victorian setting with sort of a zombie magic mechanic working around it. Whereas, you know, Diablo feels much more like, you know, just sort of Dark Ages types, and as does, you know, frankly, Path of Exile, these kind of otherworldly in a sense. And of course, this is still very otherworldly. But there is something more that the setting to it really is sort of one of the defining factors to me. It just feels like a very different game, even though you're doing many of the same things you would kind of come to expect from a RPG. Like, there's lots of whacking zombies and upgrading skills and putting in points into stuff and magic casting and all kinds of everything like that. But like, the setting, I think, is one of the things that for me sets it apart. So, I mean, you get the idea basically of what you're doing here. It's bashing stuff and collecting loot. The skill window, you know, rather than selecting a class immediately after you gain your first level, you pick your class. After 10 levels, you'll pick a second class. And those two classes combine into what you really are. It's not like a class and a subclass. They really are sort of two halves of a whole. So, for example, if you select an Arcanist and Shaman, you will end up with a Druid. And then you have sort of the full spectrum of those two sort of subclasses to work from, and you can preference one or the other, focus on them equally, do a lot of different things. So where this game finds its kind of depth in complexity of its skill set is in this dual class setup. Is dual class is, again, kind of the wrong word for it, because Arcanist and Shaman always equals a druid. A demolitionist and an occultist will always equal whatever that is. I think I want to say like soldier and occultist is a warder or something like that. Hard to say. But the point being that you'll select this first class, but that's not like who you are. That's not your first class. That's just sort of where you're beginning. We'll start with a Nightblade here. And once you're into the class area, this is where you'll make a lot of your kind of key decisions about what kind of build you have. At the bottom here, you have your kind of main points into sort of the Nightblade class. And the more you put of these points into this setup, the more of the particular class skills you unlock. So the interesting choice you make here is, let's say I put my first point into Nightblade, and then I really, I'm going to put some points into Blade Burst. And right here with my third point, you get 3 points on every level, 2 points after, I want to say I don't know, I think it's level 50 or something like that. It drops down to 2 points per level. You have to start making a choice between, am I going to continue to just invest in my skill in general, which gives me, upgrades to my health and my mana and my basic skills like physique, cunning, spirit, or kind of strength and damage and magic, which you get, but your skill that you're using will stay weak. So let's say what I really want to do is get up here to Shadow Strike, and I'm just going to plow up to Shadow Strike instead of investing a lot of points into our Marastus Blade Burst here. Or alternatively, I could say, this Blade Burst is a thing I really want to invest in. I'm going to put my points there and forego having access to these other skills in the short term, so I can get this up to being a real damage bruising thing. And then by the time you have two classes to choose from, that becomes a lot more of a lot more deep, complex decision making. So builds are really interesting in this game, even though it looks like a more traditional style of skill selection. Because I'm going Nightblade, that suggests sort of I'm going to be a big damage dealer, so I'd put my points into Cunning there, which just gives me sort of a straight up boost of damage. And then let's make that our main attack, and we'll keep talking while we go kill more stuff. Because killing stuff in ARPGs, clicking buttons, that's the whole point. The armor and loot system is pretty standard here, certainly much more so than Path of Exile. You would just kind of be picking up your basic equipment, and it's going to have different, levels of quality, depending, everything from sort of the ultra legendary to your base, just white, gray stuff, and everything in between. Yellow is, and you do, of course, always have sort of super special hard monsters that just pop up from time to time. But you have your basic white loot, which is just sort of lowest quality stuff. Yellow is sort of the next level up. It's your basic magic stuff. Green's a little better. Blues are more unique, more rare. And then, of course, the kind of top tier legendary stuff. And you don't really start to find that very much until later in the game. The interesting thing about the way that the loot itself, the actual equipment you wear, matches up to your skills, is that, and this is true, this is what makes some of the builds kind of interesting in Grim Dawn. Not a lot of stuff has the base attack. Like, there's all kinds of different types of attack. And if we go into your character inventory, you can kind of see the different types of damage, physical and pierce and bleed and trauma, and all kinds of different like magic damage. And as you can see, a lot of this stuff is 0 right now. Most of my damage is purely physical, which, low level makes sense. But even as you go further up, if you have a lot of, you have a build this base 8 acid damage, you start to find equipment. A lot of the equipment is more likely to give you a % improvement to skills and damage types rather than base improvement. So you may find just a huge damage dealing sword, but that sword is dealing out a fire damage, and you're much more of an acid damage type character, that sword does you virtually no good at that point. And so what you really have to be conscious of when you're making your builds is both having an effective build, number one, but being really conscious of the type of damage that you're doing and the type of a character you created. So even though I might be a Nightblade, I might be a physical damage Nightblade or more of a magic damage Nightblade, and the kinds of armor and skills and stuff like that that I'll select to supplement that sort of core idea of a build is going to be different than I would for another type of Nightblade. Like not all Nightblades are the same, not all Druids are the same, and so on from there. Beyond that, like I say, there's not a ton extra to talk about from the perspective of kind of interesting or unexpected gameplay mechanics. After that, it is kind of your standard ARPG. Equipment probably works about like you think it would. The ways your skill bar acts about like you think you would. You get skills in the ways you think you would. Quests work like you think they would. All these things are sort of I don't want to say standard because that sort of sounds condescending, but it's not. It doesn't deviate strongly from the sort of classic Diablo 2 ARPG formula. If anything, I think that's what I compare this game ultimately to, is Diablo 2. It has, it's very much focused on a story that you can go back and repeat in different places and different parts to sort of, progress and grind or seek out specific kinds of loot. But it doesn't follow that path of exile idea of lots of little things to deviate from. There isn't kind of this... at least not one that I'm aware of, sort of like the big map system at the end of, Path of Exile's end game, where, you're crafting these maps and you enter into them and then you go fight monsters with all kinds of modifiers adjusted to it, or these kind of individual, 2-hour competitive game types, or even in Diablo 3, like Diablo 3 has its adventure mode and its rifts and all that. This does not have as much of that. What this does have that I want to dive into is what's called Crucible mode. Crucible mode is, I want to say, a $5 DLC, and this is the alternative to just kind of endlessly going over the story campaign elements again and again and again. And we'll throw in my warder here so we can figure out what that is. But you can see here, like when I look at these characters and see what they are, Warlock, Pyromancer, Druid, okay, well, those are the kinds of builds apparently I like. Those aren't matched up with that soldier, demolitionist, occultist, shaman, arcanist we were looking at earlier. These are what the combinations of certain things end up being. I want to say my warlock is like an arcanist, occultist, which is sort of a magic damage dealer mixed up with a pet class. A warder, as we'll see in a second here, I want to say is a soldier and occultist. Let's take a look. Soldier and shaman, pardon me. Oh yeah, and I got the shaman because I like the big two-handed damage. So this is the alternative sort of play style for Grim Dawn, and this is a paid DLC. This is a level character 22, so you can see he's got some of those blue items, the green items, which I say is sort of the it's yellow, green, blue, and then sort of there's the legendary items, which I really don't have access to yet, or haven't picked any up. So the way this Crucible works is it's more of a competitive mode. You'll gain a certain number of points by completing levels in the Crucible. And so you get wave after wave. It works a little bit like a tower defense game, and in fact you can plop down towers. We'll create one here for our quick run we're about to make. I like damage dealing stuff. So what about, is Death Chill? Icy orbs slowing their advance. Relatively. No, I want a damage deal. Let's do Stormcaller. Sure. Bolts of lightning, reduce resistances. Yeah, create that one. And do I have any other? I have very few skills in this guy. So the Crucible, you go through these waves. Each time you activate Lokar, the Master of the Crucible, you will start a wave of 10. When you reach the end of the 10th wave, which usually has some sort of boss associated with it, you get to make a decision whether you want to keep going, risking all the progress you've earned to that point, or stop and collect whatever reward you've earned based on what you've done so far. And we'll go ahead and start this, and I'll let you kind of see what that looks like. There are up to 150 levels you can do in any Crucible, and that's each mode or each difficulty level has its own. See, my little tower did its job there. And they each get progressively harder. I want to say after the first 30 levels, they do start adding modifiers to the map, and that can enhance creatures. It can lower your your resistances. It can do all kinds of different stuff. So as you progress, you have to keep coming back and checking in. Do I want to keep going? Is it getting past my ability to manage what's coming at me here? And honestly, I mean, it's not easy by any means, particularly on lower levels. Although this mode is accessible from level 1, I really don't recommend it at level 1 in particular, because you just don't have any equipment yet. So even if you are able to do it, it'll take a long time to kill anything. It's clearly an idea that is it seems much more built around the idea of being something much higher level characters will find value with. I hate these ice guys. No, I'm just happy to get them. They don't freeze me. You will notice a multiplier right here. As you complete each level within a time frame, that multiplier will increase, meaning the score that you get for having completed that amount of level goes up, and this is where the competitive part comes in. There's a timer right here that says how long I have left. Not specifically in the level. I won't fail the Crucible if I don't do it in that time, but if you don't complete that level within that amount of time, the modifier will reset back to normal. So you just won't collect the same number of points. In other words, finishing these quickly is pretty beneficial, and particularly if you're doing a score chase. I'm not aware of. Here we are in the 10th round of this level. Beat this guy up a bit. I'm not aware of the scores being tracked like among friends or anything like that. It doesn't feel, it's not, as far as I can tell, sort of a broader community-wide track. It's just sort of how well you've done against your past performance. And again, that's one of those sort of senses that I get of it not being as kind of fully featured. There are some things missing. That, again, I think are more a function of it being a relatively small studio with certainly a modest budget, and they've done a lot with that. But at the same time, I don't find myself looking at this game and not coming across things from time to time that make me go, well, I wish they'd done this instead. It is really nice. So we'll just end this Crucible. I could definitely go for a number of other rounds, but I think you get the idea. Once you decide you're done, you'll get a batch of experience for how much you did, and you'll get access through these doors to some treasure chests, which have some loot based on how far you got. I didn't get very far, so I don't expect anything all that impressive. But even for just like 10, doing 10 rounds of this thing, you get something worth your time. It doesn't feel like it's. I've never kind of gotten back here and felt like it was cheating me, certainly. And even if you fail, even if you die, you will get some equipment and benefits, and it doesn't feel like it's totally cheating you. But clearly, these rewards would be much higher if I'd completed 50 or 100 rounds instead of just the 10 that I completed. Putting into the kind of larger context of an ARPG, I like that there's an ARPG out there that's sort of more by an independent studio. I like that that says that it's healthy enough to support, a huge, massive game like Diablo 3 with its expansion and rumors of at some point maybe even a Diablo 4, though. That's still very much in a wait and see period. I like this as a fleshed out game. I like that they're doing well enough that they're able to release some DLC and some support for it. I think it speaks to the relative health of it, of the genre, though it does sort of feel a little bit Titan's Questy to me, which is not a pejorative. Titan's Quest was a great game, but at the same time, it was a very straightforward game, and it didn't feel like it had while it's healthy enough to be out there and be present and sort of have this level of number of games of this type in the world, it's certainly not bubbling over like FPS games, which are around every bend, or RPG games even increasingly. So it sort of it feels like it suggests a genre that's doing well but not great, and that's just sort of an impression I have in general of the ARPG genre. Like it's nice that we have Path of Exile and Diablo 3 and Grim Dawn out there, but also there's something about playing Grim Dawn that makes you understand, I think to some degree, the complexity of creating a fully fleshed ARPG game, because they come with all these particular in-game expectations and artistic asset animations and game type expectations. Like those, they remind me very much of MMOs, just in the fact that I imagine when you start trying to put together a game like this, you just keep coming across the layers and layers and layers and layers of expectations people have. It's not just does it have a good loot system, it's does it have a good character creation system, does it have a good skill system, does it have something to keep you clicking and keep you playing over time, like the Crucible, does it have really, really cool loot drops, and does it have things that can work together in synergy? Like there's just these levels of expectation, I think, that come with this kind of genre that make it more complex, make it harder to make lots and lots of games for. You look at something like an FPS, and while there's all sorts of balance and level design, I don't want to dismiss at all how complex it is to make a really great FPS. At the same time, it isn't just sort of infinite feeling, like it's just branch upon branch upon branch. You need to do 4 or 5 things, and you need to do those things really well and execute on them really smartly and create your own place in the world. You can do that in an ARPG as well, but it also feels like then you start to see the cracks of stuff that's missing. Grim Dawn is a game that I really enjoy playing, but at the same time, I feel like I see the cracks in it here and there. And I hope that they have more time to flesh it out, because I also think it's definitely the youngest of the 3 out there. So it's a game that I want to keep coming back to maybe in another year or two to see how they've fleshed it out, how they've developed it, and kept kind of progressing. It's 20-something, I want to say, dollars on Steam. Didn't look that up ahead of time, but it is available on Steam, and you can check it out there. I definitely recommend it as far as an ARPG. I've had a lot of fun playing, and I've certainly got my money's worth out of it. It is the indie of the group. It is a smaller team, and that has all the sort of charm and characteristics that you like, but as well as, like I say, sort of the downsides of just the level of support capacity available from a smaller team. So anyway, quick look at Grim Dawn. Having looked at Path of Exile, Grim Dawn, next time in our final look at the sort of state of the ARPG genre, we will hit the 800-pound gorilla and go to Blizzard for a look at Diablo 3 in its state now, 3 or 4 years down the road. Anyway, as always, thanks for joining me for this quick look at the state of ARPGs. My name is Sean Sands from Gamers with Jobs. We will see you real soon.